It's lights out, and welcome back, everybody, to the Low Downforce podcast, the For Friend Formula One podcast. The 2025 season is upon us. We missed all of our day one listeners from last season, our rookie season, but we are back. We are veterans now, and we got to introduce the team all over again. You have myself, Ben, devout Lando Norris fan, got the hoodie on, McLaren all around, baby. But there's not just me. We also have Josh. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Excited to be back for season 2. You know how it is.
We've got my fellow McLaren fan, Matt.
Oh, yeah. Ready for another season. We're looking hot, baby. I'm ready for it.
And we've got J9 to round it out back for season 2. How we feeling?
Very excited for this season, not just for the podcast, but to get back into some racing. So I'm ready.
I think that is true. We are all stoked to be back recording for y'all. We are excited to have the mics turned back on, but we're also shaping up for maybe one of the greatest Formula One seasons of all time. We will be talking on the track, off the track, all year long. Gotta stay tuned week in, week out. But before we get into all the details of why it's going to be so great, we know there's some new listeners. We know some people who've taken a long off season. They've taken a break from Formula One. They got to turn their engines back on, get back into it. So we are coming to you first things first with our season profiles. That is our team and our driver profiles to get you ready for lights out in Australia, the first race of the season. We will be going in reverse constructors standings. So maybe that's saving the best for last. Unless you're a Kick Sauber fan, then it's saving it for first. We're going to get kicked right off with 10th place Kick Sauber. What is there to know?
Yeah, so Kick Sauber, not great. But the official team name is Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber. We're probably just going to refer to it as Kick Sauber because that's obviously much easier to say. And it's a mouthful. The team debuted in 1993 just as Sauber. But they rebranded in 2024 to be Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber. So that's what they are. But next year they're going to be rebranding again, and they will be Audi with whatever sponsor names they tack onto the end there. So who knows? And as we mentioned, last year they finished last place, 10th in the constructors standings. So they kind of struggled. They had a very bad season, but they're trying to rebuild into becoming Audi, so we'll see what happens. Their two drivers are Nico Hülkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto. And Nico, he's German. He's entering his 12th F1 season. Last year he drove for Haas, and he had a great season there for Haas standards and finished 11th out of all the drivers on the grid, so that was pretty good. And Bortoleto, he's Brazilian, and this is his rookie season in F1. Last year he competed in Formula 2 with Invicta Racing, and he actually won Formula 2. And the year before that, he won Formula 3. So he's a super enticing young prospect, has had a lot of success in some of the feeder series, and we'll see how he does here as a rookie in Formula 1.
I think he's one of only 4 or 5 drivers ever to win F3 and F2 first year. 2 others being George Russell and Oscar Piastri, who surprised.
And I believe Charles Leclerc also.
I think so too. So 3 other drivers who are currently in F1. You'll hear about them more later.
And then one thing to watch for Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber this season is the fact that they're changing to Audi next season. And it's a very transitional phase because they were obviously really bad next year, and they're trying to be a much better team with Audi, and they're getting a lot of investment and stuff like that. So it's kind of just to see, can Nico Hülkenberg, who's this veteran of the sport, bring some stability to the team, outdrive the car like he has done for Haas in the past, and really allow this team to progress into becoming Audi for next season.
Absolutely, and that is a really good reason to root for them, to be honest. I think that if you're new into F1, you haven't chosen a team yet, and you want to see an underdog with a lot of potential, this is a great team to root for. They have all the potential in the world, being a factory-backed powerhouse, possibly coming into 2026. And so, this is the time to get on the train, because otherwise you're just going to be a bandwagon.
Literally nothing but up from there.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get worse than how it went last season.
It wasn't until the second to last race of the season, I believe, that they scored their first and only points of the season. So you are not wrong. The only way is up for certain. And another team that's hoping that the only way is up is Williams Racing, officially now Atlassian Williams Racing. They've got a new title sponsor. They are one of only a few teams that have kept the same branding since they joined Formula One. They are the third oldest continuous brand in Formula One, first joining in 1977. And as I said, they've always been Williams Racing. As we go in order, they were ninth in the Constructors' Championship last year, but there's been a little bit of a switch up to their driver lineup, and quite an exciting one. They're returning Alex Albon along with F1 veteran but new teammate Carlos Sainz, bringing a lot of excitement to the team. So first with Alex Albon, he is the only driver in Formula One who races under the flag of Thailand, representing Thailand, one of two Asian drivers. We will talk about Yuki Tsunoda in a little bit. This is his 6th year in Formula One, his 4th year driving for Williams. So as I mentioned, he's the veteran on the team returning to keep pushing the team forward. He only finished 16th in the Drivers' Championship last year, so they want to trend upwards, not downwards. But the real talking point, one of the biggest talking points of the offseason and last season, is that his teammate is Carlos Sainz of Spain. This is his 11th year in Formula One. And a little fun fact, he becomes only the 3rd driver in Formula One history to race for Ferrari, McLaren, and Williams, the 3 oldest, most historic Formula One brands. The other 2 being Alain Prost and Nigel Mansell, multi-time championship winners. They're good company to have around. But as I mentioned, Carlos changed teams. He drove for Ferrari last year, one of the powerhouses in the sport. But understandably, he got replaced by one and only Sir Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world driver champion, arguably the greatest of all time. So when he comes knocking, Carlos has to get packing, unfortunately, but he has found his home at Williams, and he finished 5th in the Drivers' Championship last year. So definitely some talent to pull this team upward. Which brings me to my one thing to watch, and it's Sainz related, but it's really about Alex Albon. Alex Albon has had bad teammates his entire Formula One career, except for his brief stint with Max Verstappen, who dusts everybody. So this is going to be a make or break year for Alex Albon. We have to see how he performs against Carlos Sainz. If he does well, then maybe more top teams are going to be hunting for him. If he doesn't do well, then maybe he's been holding the team back and the team maybe needs to look into moving on from him. But that's definitely something to pay attention to this season.
Yeah, I think that's gonna,
you got it.
I think that's going to be a really big thing for Williams, and something that's really unique for them for that kind of the driver lineup. Getting Sainz is very big for them, and I'm hoping to see some really good racing from both Sainz and Albon, hopefully with Albon really learning some of that vet information and skills and tactics from Sainz. I like to look at Williams as really like the comeback team, not just from last season, but I think from the history of F1. Rooting for this team is rooting for tradition and rooting for that team that's been there for so long, but it's a rich history in English driving. So that's definitely something that they like continue to push in their organization overall. I know within the past few years, there's really been a change of leadership. So they've gotten a lot of fresh new personnel within the organization. And I think that's really pushing them to go and focus on investment, growth, and trying to get out of the really like bottom tier of the grid, moving into the middle tier and obviously up towards the top of the grid. But it's kind of hard to do that in, 1 or 2 seasons. So I'm looking to see if they're really going to move into that middle pack and be a really steady, consistent middle pack team. So a really big reason to cheer for them is when they do get back on the top, and they've been on the top for so many seasons in F1 history, you can really be that person to say, I was with them the whole time. But they really are just so rich in tradition that it's a great team to root for.
And Williams is the sister team to Mercedes. So Mercedes, you would think, is always going to stay higher than where Williams is going to be, even though they are one of the older teams in the league. But one of the other sister teams next up on the standings is Visa Cash App Racing Bulls F1 team. Another crazy...
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, crazy. Just all that. Formula One is all about the sponsorships. And if you can pay somebody to get their team name in their brand in your team name, it's going to happen. So they are the sister team of Red Bull, the younger sister, as you would say. And they debuted in 2006 as Toro Rosso and then became AlphaTauri. And now they are Visa Cash App Red Bull, a.k.a. VCarb. So they've been through the changes of names, but they've always been within the Red Bull family. Last year they finished 8th, like I said, with just 46 points. So a struggling season for kind of the whole Red Bull family. We'll get to Red Bull later. But their 2 drivers are Yuki Tsunoda. He's Japanese, as Ben mentioned. He was one of the other Asian drivers. And he debuted in 2021. He's entering his 5th season. And last year he was on VCarb as well. He's spent his entire career there. And he finished 12th in the Drivers' Championship. So he was not too bad individually last year. But his teammate is new because his teammate last year struggled. He had multiple going through it. And his new teammate is Isaac Hadjar. He's French, and he's another rookie that we're looking out for this season. And last year he was also in F2, and he finished 2nd in F2 last season. So right behind Bortoleto, who got 1st. And then the thing to look out for VCarb this season is, will Yuki Tsunoda ever get promoted to Red Bull? He's kind of been because they're sister teams, he's kind of been the lead driver at VCarb for all these years, and everyone thinks he's going to get promoted to take the 2nd seat next to Max Verstappen, and it never happens. He always gets passed over. So he's pretty much racing for his job and for his career at this point, unless he wants to be stuck in a smaller team. But I think his real goal is to be promoted to the lead team in Red Bull.
Yeah, my one thing to cheer for VCarb, again, a team on the bottom of the table looking to climb a little more, especially with Red Bull's backing, kind of goes hand in hand with what you said there, Josh, is Yuki Tsunoda might be done in Formula One after this year. A lot of his existence in Formula One, not to discredit him as a driver, he's a very good driver, is he has a strong Honda backing. He comes from a long line of Honda-backed Japanese drivers in Formula One. But Red Bull is switching away from Honda engines after this season. Honda will now be supporting Aston Martin. We'll talk about them in a little bit, but spoiler alert, Daddy's Money is one of the drivers on the team. So even when there are only 2 slots, realistically, there's only 1 slot. So if you like Yuki, he's a likable driver. He's a fun driver. He's an emotional driver. This might be the last year to cheer for him. And the one little add-on I want to make is I said he's an emotional driver. The FIA, the governing body for Formula One, has cracked down on driver cursing. Both Isaac Hadjar and Yuki Tsunoda are known for being quite explicit on team radios during the races. So maybe just watch, see which one of them gets fined first, and maybe how many times they get fined throughout the season. Hopefully they'll tone it down a little bit. Hopefully the FIA will relax a little bit for sure about fining swearing, but this could be an entertaining team to watch, at least as those kind of rules are in place.
For sure. And next up, we've got one of a team that's close to my heart, not my favorite team, but they're called Haas, right? We all call them Haas, but they're technically the MoneyGram Haas F1 team. They were actually started by Gene Haas in 2016, who's actually a NASCAR Cup team owner. So pretty interesting to see that there's a little bit of crossover between NASCAR and F1 there. Last year, obviously, they finished in 7th place. They've got 2 fairly young drivers, one a lot younger than the other, and Esteban Ocon and Oliver Behrman. And Esteban, he's French. He was on Alpine last year, which was, I think, a very interesting concept where they had two French drivers on a French team. But he's actually entering his 10th season, having debuted in 2016, and last year finished in 14th place in the Drivers' Championship. And Oliver Behrman, a lot of us, if you did watch last season, may recognize while he was in F2 last season for the majority of the season, he also had raced a few races in the F1 space for both Haas and Ferrari. He's a young British driver. This will technically be his rookie season, and he was with Prema Racing last year in F2. He was actually partnered up with another young driver we'll talk about, Andrea Kimi Antonelli. And he had a disappointing season, to be honest, having gotten, I think he ended in 12th, it was, out of all the drivers. And he was supposed to be one of the favorites. So definitely going to see, it'll be interesting to see how he ends up in F1 this upcoming season. He actually finished 18th last season out of 24 drivers, which, having only raced in 3 races, says a lot. So definitely something to look for. I think that first, Haas being the only American F1 team, and then having a brand new driver lineup. Ollie Behrman is supposed to be one of the best prospects coming into F1. I think them trying to shake up their order and really changing the structure that they've had the past few years is something to watch for this year.
Yeah, I completely agree. And really, the one word that I would use for Haas is scrappy. You think that they're going to be towards the bottom of the grid, but they always kind of come with these surprising things, like unpredictable race results where you weren't really thinking that they were going to get towards the top of the grid in the race, surprise point finishes. And it's just like hard fighting attitude to get into the race and push some buttons, to be quite honest. So rooting for them is rooting for an underdog, but like a scrappy underdog, that team that's really going to kind of get in there and make something happen out of, in the past, kind of out of nothing. But this season with a really, pretty decent driver lineup, very excited to see how they're going to do. So I love their story. They are, again, the only American team. So it's something for us over in the US to root for. And it just brings that excitement to the race.
Jana, I'm glad you brought that up because I think Haas is the perfect example of, like in any sport, there are teams that have higher aspirations than others. I think Formula One, it's easy to be like, oh, I cheer for Kick. They stink. Why do I watch this? This sucks. I mean, we all live in Atlanta. We're all Falcons fans. We know the struggle bus all too well when it comes to football. But Haas is a team that everybody was expecting them to finish last year, and they finished 7th. And in some ways to them, that was like winning races. That was like winning championships compared to the teams that have 7-8 figures more funding, the Ferraris, the McLarens, the Mercedes, who are actually competing for championships. So just because you're a bottom team, that doesn't mean that your goal is the same as the top teams. There are wins for everybody throughout the season. Another team looking for wins is Alpine.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about Williams being so rich in English tradition. We'll get to Ferrari and they're Italian. Alpine is so unique in that they're French. And I think that really is throughout everything they do as an organization and as a team. So BWT Alpine Formula One team, their official name. They did have a disappointing 6th place finish last year. But they had a lot of driver struggles and a lot of car struggles. And so throughout this season, they actually got so much better and really ended on a very good note. This year and throughout their history, they've been trying to stand out and really define who they are as a team. They've remained stuck in the midfield. And I think that they're really going to bring a good blend of stability, fresh talent, and something that's just going to kind of be a make or break for their organization. They've been in F1 since 1986. They were originally under the name of Renault, but they rebranded to Alpine in 2021, brought in a lot of different investors as well. So it really kind of is like a fresh rebrand, fresh organization throughout the past few years, but they really, again, are deep into that French tradition of their car. Their driver lineup, again, this year, they brought back Pierre Gasly, very good French driver. He's entering his 9th season in F1. I love watching Pierre race. He has that kind of drive and energy in how he drives. He has a drive in his drive. But you can kind of see that in how he fights and how he really approaches the grid and racing on the track. I really enjoy watching him. He last year again was on Alpine and he finished 10th overall, which was pretty good for him. He really struggled at the beginning with the car. They had a lot of issues, and so again over the season he really raced hard and was trying and successfully got up into that mid to upper grid. And then this season, their second driver is Jack Doohan. He is Australian, so very exciting for him to have his first rookie season as a driver, and your first race is the Australian Grand Prix. So it's a home race for him, which is very exciting. He's one of, again, just a handful of rookies in F1 this season. And so last year he did have a guest appearance. So he did drive, and he finished 24th place out of 24 drivers. But does it really count? He had one race. So we're really excited to actually have him be Alpine's reserve driver and see how his performance does alongside Pierre. I think last year it was really a hallmark for Pierre and Esteban Ocon, who are partners. They hated each other off the grid. They weren't friends. And so you really saw that battle throughout the organization. Like, it was just not a good look for them. So this year, having different drivers, hopefully they can work better together. It really is a team sport, if you want to look at it that. So looking at those internal team dynamics and external speculation of how the team is going to do, I'm really excited for to see that this year.
I like how we've been talking so far as like this team is interesting because they've got rich history like Williams. This team is interesting because it's Haas, an underdog, and J9 is like Alpine is French. That's what they got going for them. But I do think that they are one of the most exciting teams to watch in Formula One because, as you hinted at, there's a lot of drama on and off track surrounding this team. There has been for a while. Renault, at least when they were branded as Renault, would join the sport, not perform, quit, rejoin, not perform, quit. They're kind of in this vicious cycle. We saw it with the teammates, like you mentioned, Gasly and Ocon last year. There might already be driver drama in Alpine. And so that's what I'm going to tell you to cheer for. Cheer for the chaos coming from the pink and blue garages. J9 mentioned Jack Doohan is the second driver at Alpine right now, but they have already signed Franco Colapinto, who took the F1 world by storm last year, replacing Logan Sargent at Williams for the back half of the season. Did very well in his first few races. And the details of his contract are he's a reserve driver, but they signed him for 5 years, which most people wouldn't want to be a reserve driver for 5 years because you're not actually racing. And so there's high speculation, there is high likelihood that if Jack Doohan does not perform well in the first few races, he will be quickly replaced by Franco Colapinto. And so I like Jack Doohan. Jack Doohan does some of the coverage, or did some of the coverage for F1 TV, the post-race, pre-race analysis, kind of in the commentary booth, and I thought he did a really good job. He's been Alpine's reserve driver for a couple years, so he deserves this chance finally. I really hope he does well. And then on the flip side, Franco Colapinto is the first Argentinian driver in 22 years in a country that loves Formula One driving. He's got like the whole backing of a nation behind him. And so one thing to cheer for is if you're cheering for Doohan, hope he does well. If you're cheering for Colapinto, hope Colapinto takes the world by storm again. And either way, as the neutral fan, just be ready for the drama, get a cup of coffee, get a cup of tea ready, and just wait for the headlines to come in. And that brings us to the end of the bottom half, the teams 10 through 6 in the Constructors last year. We're going to now jump into the top 5 teams. Continuing on the order, it's going to be maybe some of the more familiar names to you if you haven't gotten fully into the sport yet. And that's starting off with 5th in last year's Constructors' Championship, Aston Martin. They first joined Formula One in 1991, but oh boy, were they not called Aston Martin then. They were called Jordan Grand Prix, and then Midland, and then Spiker, and then Force India, and then Racing Point. But as of 2021, they are Aston Martin, cognizant Formula One racing team. I believe they are British history, baby. Racing green, you see it on the road Aston Martin cars. It is true in the F1 car as well. Their 2 drivers, I hinted at Daddy's money a little bit earlier. So the owner of Aston Martin F1 team is Lawrence Stroll. His son Lance Stroll is one of the drivers, and he is paired with Fernando Alonso. Starting with Fernando Alonso, because he's A, the better, and B, the more exciting driver. He is also Spanish like Carlos Sainz. He is a 2-time Formula One world champion, both of those with Minardi in the mid-2000s. He's also won the World Endurance Racing Championship in 2018, 2019. He also holds the record for the most F1 races ever by a single driver. He is 42 years old, I believe. He is the grandpa of the field, but he is a legend. Like when we talk about Lewis Hamilton, when we talk about Max Verstappen, when people talk about Michael Schumacher back in the day, Fernando Alonso carries this aura with him. He has been driving in F1 longer than some of these rookies have even been alive. So he really is the elder statesman, but he brings a lot of energy to the grid. He was at Aston Martin last year. This will be his 3rd season for Aston Martin. He finished 9th in the Drivers' Championship last year. So still top 10, still trying to carry this team higher and higher. Can the same be said about his teammate Lance Stroll? Lance Stroll is Canadian. He's the only Canadian driver on the grid. It is his 8th year in Formula One. He has been at Aston Martin for 5 years, ever since, this will be his 5th year, ever since his dad purchased the team. He finished 13th in the Drivers' Championship, so respectable, but definitely a notch below Fernando Alonso. So it's going to be interesting to watch to see, does Fernando Alonso hard carry again? Does Lance Stroll kind of pick up the slack going into the season? But the big thing to watch, and if you haven't heard of this guy, I recommend looking him up. He's not a common household name to new fans, but Adrian Newey now works for Aston Martin. Who's Adrian Newey? He is objectively the most successful car designer in Formula One history. He has won all of Red Bull's championships, pretty much. He has won championships for Williams. He has won championships for McLaren, designing their car. A lot of people think that Red Bull's slight drop-off last year is because Adrian Newey left partway through the season. He's officially not allowed to start working on the car until March of this year, which is a few months after all the other teams have been working. So the thing to watch out for is, do we see the effect of Adrian Newey in this year's car? And how long is that going to take? Or are we going to have to wait until next year when the regulations change that we really see his full effect? Aston Martin has been prone the last 2 years to regressing as the season has gone on. They've started hot and gotten worse. Look to see if they flip that. As Adrian Newey gets more involved, that Aston Martin starts to get better as the season goes on.
Yeah, Aston has always been a super interesting team to me because of the dynamic of Lance Stroll being Lawrence's son and the past few years having Fernando Alonso by his side. And Lawrence wants the best for his son. So he is heavily investing in this team to try and improve the car to let Lance Stroll be a champion, which I don't think he will be. But if you want to be a fan of Aston Martin, it would be because of the continued investment of the team. Adrian Newey is part of that. They're building a new factory for 2026 to design their cars. And like you said, Fernando Alonso, he's the grandpa. He's defeating Father Time. He is so old. Why is he still in a race car? I don't know, but he loves it, and he's a great driver. So Aston Martin is an exciting watch to follow the story because they have so many ebbs and flows throughout the year.
Yeah, and following Aston Martin, we're getting to my favorite team. So taking over here, Mercedes AMG Petronas Formula One team. my favorite team because it is so. The other teams I could say are rich in tradition. Mercedes is just rich in class. They are the team that is just like a martini, like a classic martini. No olive, no twist.
Even though
Just
Martini was a sponsor for Williams.
stop it. I just Mercedes, you can look at the car, the everyday car on the road. It's sleek, it's classy. It just brings that sophistication, in my opinion. So we're getting to Mercedes. Um, they have been around since 1954, so definitely in the early years. They had some various periods of participation throughout the years, but they've been very consistently active since, around 2010. And then they just kind of skyrocketed from there, having Lewis Hamilton as their main driver for so many years. He won numerous constructors championships, drivers championships. He was like the face of this team. Everyone, even who isn't in racing, knows Lewis Hamilton because he's Sir Lewis Hamilton. And so this year is very different. And this is going to be a very marquee year for them because Lewis Hamilton has left. And so they have to rebrand them. It's not even just let's get new drivers. It's a complete rebrand. How do they look at how they make cars? How do they look at who they are as an organization? This is going to be a very pivotal year for them. So they, had been on the top for so long. This past season, they ended in fourth in the Constructors' Championship. They had quite a few races where they were absolutely at the top. They won. And then some races where they were just pure midfield. And so this year they're looking for more consistency, looking to get back to the top. And they're trying to do that with their driver lineup. So first, we'll start George Russell. He's been in F1 since this is his 7th season. So he did really well last year. He won a few races. He's a British driver, and he really just brings a lot of decent. He's still a little bit young, but really kind of bringing some of that seasoned racing into this team where he was learning under Hamilton, but then kind of defined who he was. So that was really important. He finished 6th in the Drivers' Championship overall, and he's going to be that sounding board for rookie Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Very big racer outside of F1 in the lower divisions. And he's really just going to bring a fresh new take to the team. He's an Italian driver, and it's going to be a very interesting dynamic between the two. So Mercedes is looking for them to kind of help define that post-Hamilton era. Who is Mercedes? It's really going to be a big question for them to define this season and really try to fight for that title.
Absolutely. And, a lot of people did start to root for Mercedes. I know plenty of people who said, I'm a Mercedes fan because I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan.
Right.
And he did race for McLaren back in the day, but just wasn't the same in terms of his impact. It's still fantastic through and through. But I think this rebuilding period, I know George Russell was there last year, but this is going to be something that's really big for like a good reason to watch Mercedes. Just look at how they can rebuild. And to be honest, I wouldn't call it a coin flip, but it could go either way. They could fade back into the midfield. And there's a lot of teams that are really pushing to get out of those midfield positions. And if Mercedes doesn't utilize the rookie and Andrea Kimi Antonelli and really get a lot of performance out of George Russell, it's going to be a tough time. So, yeah, I'm hopeful personally just that Mercedes can, really rebuild from this and just start fresh with a really hot rookie. But yeah, I stay tuned to see where they end up because we don't know.
Do you mean hot as in attractiveness or hot as in talented? Because he is Italian.
Yeah, no,
he's got the swagger.
Isn't he too young for that?
He's 18. I did not mean to say that so quickly. I did not mean to be like, oh my God, he's 18. I promise, guys, don't worry.
Yeah, no, he's one of the most touted young drivers, though, and a lot of people, I'd say at first were shocked to see, oh, who's this kid who's coming in to, take the Lewis's position. But to be honest, he's there for a reason. And, this is a really good opportunity for him to become like the next Max Verstappen, like the next brand new young kid who can just really make an impact.
Well, I really thought I was just going to coast till the end of the episode, and then I remembered I have Red Bull Racing, and Red Bull Racing did not win the Constructors this year. They actually finished all the way down in third, which to a lot of teams would be a huge success based on Red Bull's recent form, not quite as good. So officially Oracle Red Bull Racing. Oh yeah, we're talking about the energy drink Red Bull. Oh yeah, we're talking about the skydiving from outer space Red Bull. The adrenaline company basically is also a Formula One team. We already talked about VCARB, but their main team is Red Bull Racing. They were first in Formula One. It was technically 1997 as Stewart Grand Prix, briefly Jaguar, but they fully took over with their own branding in 2005. They finished third last year in the Constructors' Championship, as I mentioned, which is a little bit of fall from their trajectory of the past couple seasons when they were winning Constructors' Championships. Their lineup is, of course, headlined by the one and only Max Verstappen, who maybe on the tail end of what would have been the most dominant Formula One stretch. He won races upon races upon races. He won, in my notes here, they won 21 races. I think he won 18 of them in 2023. Only won 9 last year, but that was still the most of anybody. He is the only Dutch driver. He brings along the Orange Army, if you will, that is Dutch sports fandom. It is his 11th year in Formula One. He is the 4-time and reigning Formula One driver champion. He is on top of the world. Will it stay that way? So he spent all of his career at Red Bull or at VCARB, what was then AlphaTauri, or excuse me, way back then was Toro Rosso, as we mentioned, sister team. So he bumped up from them pretty quickly and has been lights out ever since. And now he's against a fairly untested driver. His teammate is Liam Lawson. As Josh mentioned earlier, a lot of people were hoping it was Yuki Tsunoda. Liam Lawson is not technically a rookie because he has 11 races under his belt, but I'm considering him a rookie. He hasn't completed a full season in Formula One. He completed 5 races for VCARB or AlphaTauri then in 2023 when Daniel Ricciardo broke his wrist. And he also just full replaced Daniel Ricciardo last year to finish out the remaining 6 races. He's also got a unique nationality. He is from New Zealand. So Oceania crew, like stand up. You got 2 drivers from Australia. You've got 1 from New Zealand. Now y'all are feasting. He was at VCARB last year for the back half of the season, as we mentioned. This is his first year on the main team at Red Bull. And his first full season. So definitely a lot to look for. And hopefully a better car meets better performances as well as a little improvement from his experience because he did finish 21st out of the 24 drivers last year. But again, only raced 6 times. So maybe not quite an accurate representation. I hinted at it earlier, though, but the thing to really look for Red Bull, Matt was talking about Mercedes kind of having a rebuilding year. Are they going to go up? Or are they going to go down? 2024 was kind of the fall from the top step for Red Bull as a team. People thought they were untouchable. They had the most dominant season in Formula One history in 2023. Everybody thought the way 2024 started that it would be another repeat of that. But they wind up falling not just out of first into second, but all the way down to third, behind McLaren, behind Ferrari. And they definitely don't have the fastest car anymore. So they've gotten rid of Checo Perez, who a lot of people said was part of the problem last year. But now you have kind of an unproven pseudo rookie in Liam Lawson. How is that going to shake up? Like I said, they went from 21 wins in 2023 to only 9 wins in 2024. Are they going to keep dropping? Are they going to fall further back? Are Aston Martin and Mercedes going to be able to catch them? Or are they going to be able to hang tough, race in, race out with McLaren and Ferrari, the 2 current powerhouses going into the season? Definitely something to watch for.
For sure. And, it's interesting to see how the drivers and constructors just don't always align, right? And I'm not going to call every Red Bull fan a bandwagon, but they've been rewriting history and just incredibly successful. Obviously, Adrian Newey's not there anymore, and to see if they can maintain their dominance is going to be interesting. But really, if you like rooting for the very best driver on the grid, I still think Max is going to have an absolutely incredibly dominant season. So that's one reason to root for them. And Christian Horner has just done an incredible job. They are a very highly strategic team. They thrive under pressure. They've shown that even when times are tough, like, they make some incredible strategic calls. And if you hate them, I guess even better for you to see if they fall this year, because it's just been such a dominant period. And of course, last year was a little bit of a shakeup. 2023 was absolutely just Red Bull everything.
Hey, and if you need a tangible reason to root for a team, a Red Bull is a lot cheaper than a McLaren or a Ferrari. They're about a couple bucks in your grocery store instead of a couple $100,000 at a dealership. So you got that going for you.
Can your can of energy drink drive on 4 wheels? No. Now we get to the Italian engineering that is Scuderia Ferrari HP. The HP is new this year because they have a new title sponsor. Everyone's going to take money, even Ferrari. They've been in Formula One since 1950. They're the oldest team in Formula One. 1950 is when Formula One started. They've been around the entire time. Last year, they finished in second place. Almost made a push at the very end of the season to get that first place, but fell just short. And they are my favorite team, so I am terribly sad about that. Their 2 drivers, they have the best driver pairing on the grid. They have Charles Leclerc and 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. Lewis, he's the GOAT. 105 career wins, 202 podiums. And like we said, he spent the last 12 years at Mercedes. So he spent the majority of his success full-time at Mercedes. And it's his 19th season in Formula One. So, he's been there, done that. Not quite as old as Fernando Alonso, but he's the guy. He is British. I don't think we mentioned that, but he's loved. There's multiple British drivers, and he is probably the favorite of all of them. And then Charles Leclerc, the other driver, he's Monegasque. He's from Monaco. Won the Monaco Grand Prix last year for the first time. It was the crowning achievement in the entire season. And he's entering his 8th season. He debuted in 2018, and he's been with Ferrari all but his first season in Formula One. So he has been their golden boy. He is the Ferrari man, and he finished 3rd in the Drivers' Championship last year. So he had a great season, and the big thing to look for is, can Lewis Hamilton bring Ferrari back to glory? Ferrari used to be this dominant team. They've had all of the best drivers in the history of Formula One. But they've kind of struggled for Ferrari standards over the past few years. So you bring in Lewis Hamilton. You have Charles, who is one of the best drivers on the grid. Definitely the best driver pairing. Can they win the Constructors' Championship? And will either of them win the Drivers' Championship?
I thought it was interesting that Hamilton, driving for Mercedes all those years, he said, as a kid, I've always wanted to drive a Ferrari. And kids, adults, when you say, what does a race car look like? They're probably going to, draw a red car. Ferrari is just that passion and history combined. They have an unrivaled fan base. So if you're looking for a team that is just so entrenched in racing and championships, and just the name Ferrari just exudes excellence, to be quite honest, that's your team. They have dramatic victories, and really, they're dreamers. And that's probably Italian racing and Italian, I guess, culture overall. They are just dreamers. It's a prancing horse as their logo. So you're getting into excellence. You're getting into just reigning supreme as a Ferrari fan. And so, yes, you have Lewis Hamilton. Yes, you have Charles Leclerc. It's going to be just such an exciting season to have such strong drivers. So being a fan of Ferrari is really good drivers and just this really rich history of passion and love for racing.
Josh, you didn't even use your favorite line. Everybody is a Ferrari fan.
Everybody is a
Formula One.
Ferrari
It is
fan.
synonymous.
Everyone is.
You can't really bandwagon Ferrari because literally everybody is a Ferrari fan. So never too late to start.
Yeah, was that Vettel that said that?
Yeah.
Another old timer if you're new to F1, Sebastian Vettel. But that brings us to round it out with my favorite team, Ben's favorite team, the Papaya McLaren Formula One team. Been competing in F1 since 1966 in the Monaco Grand Prix, and was founded by former driver Bruce McLaren, who absolutely loved racing. Started the team as a in his mid-20s, young guy, and really just everything about Bruce was just racing. He loved it, and even gave his life for it. But they, as we have ended up at the end of the list here, finished first place in the Constructors' Championship last year. Woo woo!
Let's go, baby.
Yeah. Two very talented young drivers, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Lando is not as young, but still a fairly young driver. He's British and started in 2019, entering his 7th season, and he won his first race last year, and that was incredibly exciting. And he continued to win multiple races. So he went from his 5 years at the time in F1 not having won a single race to winning multiple in 1 year. So really big turnaround and fantastic driving from him. Obviously didn't win the drivers' championship, but he really pushed for it. And he finished in 2nd. He was also on the team last year, and so was Oscar Piastri, who's Australian. And if it weren't for Jack Doohan, this would have actually been Oscar's first Australian Grand Prix, where he was the only Australian. And then, of course, we have Doohan enter. Ricardo left last year. So, yeah, he's a young Australian driver, one of two. He debuted in 2023, like you mentioned earlier, was just absolutely incredible in F3 and F2. He also won his first Grand Prix last year. He had won a sprint race before that, but his first ever Grand Prix win was last year. So really just banner year for both drivers last year. He finished 4th. They do have a reserve driver in Pato O'Ward, who I believe, does he also race IndyCar? He does, and he's actually a Mexican driver. I was surprised to hear that after I heard his last name. But
for American listeners, if you watch the Super Bowl, there was like a crazy massive IndyCar ad that was like purely centered around Pato O'Ward. So you're looking for those links: NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One. That's another big one right there.
Oh yeah. I mean, and we haven't seen as much of him on the circuit, but even though we've got two fantastic drivers, you never know what's going to happen, and maybe he gets his chance to actually drive on the F1 grid this year. One thing to watch for, I would say, defending the Constructors title. The MCL 39 has some pretty aggressive developments, and it's looking like they have the fastest car on the grid. And look for Lando to try and beat Max in the Drivers' Championship. This is his year, in my opinion. So let's go Papaya.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to cheer for McLaren, it's because you want to root for winning and you want to defend your title, and you're a bandwagon fan.
This is
if
insane.
You become a McLaren
this
fan,
is absolutely insane. I knew this was coming.
But they are poised to have a huge year after winning the Constructors last year. Lando is currently the favorite to win the Drivers' Championship this year, and they probably have the second most talented driver pairing, I think. The CEO, Zach Brown, has said they have two number one drivers, and they don't have a lead driver and a second driver. So I think behind Ferrari, they're definitely the best two drivers. So they are going to be a team that's going to do a lot of winning this year. They obviously are coming off of a huge season a year ago. So, I mean, I think between the three teams the four of us root for, we're going to have a lot of competition between all of us this year.
A lot of feasting, hopefully, for all of us. That rounds out the 10 teams in Formula One, all 20 drivers split among them. We've mentioned multiple times already, Matt and myself are McLaren fans, J9 a Mercedes fan, and Josh in the red Ferrari fan. But we talked about there's reasons to cheer for each team. Josh, other than Ferrari, who's the team you're probably most cheering for this year?
Maybe Williams. Obviously, Carlos Sainz leaving Ferrari, going to Williams. No bad blood about him leaving. Obviously, we replaced him with Lewis Hamilton. So I think he's just going to be exciting to watch being at Williams this year. And they have a likable driver pairing, and they'll be fun to watch.
What about you, Matt?
Oh, that would have to be Haas. Yeah, American team. For those of you who did not watch last season, they've had a longtime driver up until this season, Kevin Magnussen, Danish driver. I'm Danish, love to see it, and just really came to enjoy watching them race and fight for those midfield positions.
J9?
I'm always a Ferrari fan. I really have to say that legacy kind of lives on for me.
Team
Um,
LH, Lewis Hamilton.
yeah, I go for the classiness of Mercedes, and then a Ferrari is a very close second. So I'm very excited for the lineup. Very excited to see them get some wins under the belt.
I'm going to agree with Josh. Even if we don't see eye to eye Ferrari versus McLaren, I'm also going Williams. I've cheered for them as well, besides Carlos Sainz joining, although that's a huge excitement. I think for finishing ninth on the grid, they might have the third best driver pairing in Formula One. Alex Albon has always been rated highly. I mentioned we got to see if that holds up this year with a strong teammate, and Carlos is very, very charismatic, very likable. But as J9, I think, was mentioning, that they've got a lot of history. They're one of the oldest brands, and it had been 28 years, 27 years since McLaren had won a Constructors' Championship. They achieved that. It's been even longer since Williams has seen success. So just generally want to see a team that has the history but hasn't been able to find it as of late finally climb up to closer and closer to the top steps. But that is it. We have a few more episodes coming before the season racing gets underway to get you ready for this all-exciting 2025 season. As it got slipped in there, it is the 75th year of Formula One. So a lot of pomp, a lot of circumstance, a lot of reasons to glue your eyeballs to the TV Sunday morning, Sunday night, sometimes Saturday at midnight, because of all the races all over the world. But if you've been listening all along, you can tell from this episode, we are now on YouTube. We are going to be way better posting on social media, Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, all of that. It is at Low Downforce Pod. So be sure to check us out there. Please leave a comment on these posts. Who are you cheering for this year? Why are you cheering for them this year? We want to see fans from all over. We want to take you along this journey with us. It's going to be a great year. We are stoked for it. We will talk to you soon, but until then, stay speedy. Goodbye, everyone.